I am Robynne Miller.
And I'm Jane Daly.
And today we're going to be continuing our conversation on critique groups.
Very good.
In a previous podcast, we were talking about the different kinds of groups that you can be involved in. So writing groups, writing partners, brainstorming groups, and critique groups. And we're going to talk today a little bit more about critique groups. I'll give a definition, but remember my teaser, my hook from the last time, what I said at the end of that podcast? Look at the little wheels turning.
You said that
if I had to choose, clearly it made an impact on you. If I had to choose between being critiqued by 10 people.
Or critiquing, I would choose, hold on, don't wait for it. I would choose critiquing 10 other people's work.
That's what I said.
Bam!
Woo! Okay, you get sort of bonus points. All right. The reason, if you remember correctly, is because I said that there was more value in it for me. And I'll go into that a little bit. But first, we're going to just backtrack and remind people what critique group is.
Okay.
So before you pick up your cup of coffee, I want you to tell people what a critique group is.
Well, I'll tell you what it isn't.
Let's start there.
A critique group is not a place where you're going to have your work shredded.
Yes.
It's not a place where your ego is going to be bruised. It's also not a place where someone is going to tell you that your work is so good that you will never have to do any work on your writing at all. So those are two things that a critique group is not. Some of the things that a critique group are is a place for fellowship, because we all know that writing is so solitary. And it's nice to be able to come and meet with a group of people who share your common interest, who love to write, and who can offer you some honest feedback on your work.
Yeah. And it is a great place to exchange, because no matter how close your group is to the same phase of writing, somebody's going to be a little bit further along than somebody else, or know something and that could apply to the whole group. So you share industry knowledge.
Well, and sometimes you may learn something as you're writing craft books, which you should be reading craft books. You may read something that just makes the light bulb go off. And you're very conscious of it in not only your writing, but other people's writing. And so that helps your fellow critique partners with something that you learned that they didn't have to go after and learn.
So it's just a wonderfully collaborative place. One of the things that we're sort of blessed here in Northern California, that we have a lot of really quality workshops available and conferences available and intensives. So, but not everybody can go to all of them. So when somebody goes to one, they can bring back that knowledge to their group and spread the love, spread the joy. And so that's an important part of a critique group. Another thing that a critique group is not is free copy editing. And a lot of people do view that as free, because an editor can cost money and people want to get that for free. And it's not for two reasons. One is simply because you don't submit your whole, 600-page manuscript at a time.
Please don't.
It's in small chunks, and you could probably get every word seen, but it would take you years to do it. So that's number one. Number two, you really want to leave copy editing to the professionals. Just because somebody's willing to do it for free doesn't mean they should do it.
Well, and that's really not a critique. A critique is all about, because a critique isn't to pick out every comma that's missing, or to, although people, you tend to do it, but it's basically to look at how's your flow, how's your pacing, how are your descriptions, how's your character progressing through his or her journey in your book.
And I think that's really an important aspect of a critique group when you're trying one out. And I think you should try one out. Instead of just saying, now I want to be involved in this group, check it out for a couple of times. See what kind of critiques they give. See what the tone is. Because there are some people who want to be in a critique group. I actually have met 2 people in my career as a writer.
Uh-oh.
2 people, and only 2 that I was directly involved with, but their goal was not to write and submit. It was because they thought their gift was telling other people what was wrong with their writing.
Oh my.
Okay. And I think if that's your gift, I'm sure that God will call it into being, but I'm
become an editor.
Yes.
If that's your gift, become an editor.
Yes. But that one of them actually told me that was her ministry, but she was not very kind. She was we call them red letter people or red ink people who like their red ink and like to see it all over a page. And I think it's a little bit of a power trip, a little bit.
You're probably right.
So a critique group should not be just a place that you get and give really aggressive, demoralizing, debilitating, soul-crushing edits.
So
and
you'll probably
critiques.
get that from a professional editor, and that's
You might
their
get that,
place.
but you want that, and you want somebody to know what they're talking about.
Right.
I would rather have a professional do that. So critique groups are not editing. But when I said that, I mentioned this briefly in a previous podcast. When I walked through the doors of my first Inspire, because I lead now. Well, I lead Inspire. Actually, I'm the president, but I lead 2 critique groups in Inspire. But when I just entered my first group as a security blanket for a friend of mine who was super introverted and wanted me to come to hold her hand, she never went to another meeting, and next day I was a member. So go God. But what I was sort of expecting, because it was a critique group that was in a Christian organization, was that everybody would just sing Kumbaya, pat each other on the head. And because, people like to be, they're afraid that they're going to be mean if they're honest.
Well,
and
there's a difference between meanness and honesty.
Yes.
I mean, when you ask your husband, does this dress make me look fat? You don't want necessarily honesty. You want, of course it doesn't. You look fabulous. You look as beautiful as the day I married you. That's not what a critique group is.
and shouldn't be. If you want to be better in your writing, you should want very good, honest, constructive criticism.
Right.
But you also, here's something that when I walked through that door and I realized this was a group of people who were, one of my catchphrases is Team Jesus. Although I love Inspire, and we both serve on the board. I love leading Inspire. I love our West Coast Christian Writers is our conference arm. I love all of that. But really, I'm about Team Jesus. I'm Team Jesus before I'm Inspire. I'm Team Jesus before I'm West Coast Christian Writers. And that's kind of what I look for in an organization. If you're a little bit, or even a church, if you're a little bit more impressed with or loyal to your own bylaws or your own image or your own whatever than you are to the gospel and to the God who is calling you into this writing, then I get a little nervous. But Inspire, I was really surprised at how honest but kind and encouraging people were. So yeah, rest, as I say, is history.
Another thing that a critique group can help you do is to kind of brainstorm if you're struggling with a scene that you feel like this just doesn't work. My character would my character do this? Your critique group can help get you through some of those speed bumps.
Yeah.
Just to help you get over that lump of, I'm not sure this is working. What do you think?
Yeah. And the better we get, in our critique group, the better feedback we're going to be giving. So instead of just saying it was a little slow in the middle, we would say, I noticed that you did a lot of summary there and not as much action. So I think the balance needs to be better. So as you get deeper into your writing career, you're going to be able to give better feedback too, which becomes more helpful. And that actually is what I was talking about. When I was in my critique group for, I don't know, a couple of years, I think, before the critique group leader, who was phenomenal, wonderful person, stepped down, and our group didn't have a leader anymore. So I think it was one of those situations where I stood still and everybody took a step back, kind of a thing. So I'm not entirely.
Who wants to volunteer? Anybody who doesn't want to volunteer, raise your hand.
I'm not sure I was there that day, actually, which is sort of how I became president of Inspire too. I'm kind of I kind of get into situations like this where I'm not quite sure how I ended up somewhere, but my
slippery slope.
It is just, yeah, you got to pay more attention. That's what, pay more attention.
Go to every meeting.
Yes. So I ended up as a leader, and it's just a facilitator. It's not a, you don't have to have a degree in something to facilitate a critique group. It's really just keeping everybody on track, keeping the pace moving, making sure that everybody's, get equal chance to speak and all those kind of things. But my philosophy as a leader in business, which is what I did as my first career in management, is to figure out what the needs of the people are who you're trying to serve, and then try to serve them well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to, say, I want to teach you all how to write, romance, and nobody in your group wants to write romance, then that's not really serving them.
Probably not going to be your choice of critique group.
No. So I'm a big fan of things like not only discussion, but surveys. So I wrote out this survey and had everybody fill it out. Where are you in your writing? What would be most helpful to you? What is not helpful to you? What would you change the way we've been doing things? If you could, just try to get feedback. And one of the things that was most interesting is when a critique had gotten, was given, every person would say, 10 to 20 things. Like in this line, you flip tenses, and here there was a logic kind of flaw, and here there was too much summary, and here you were telling instead of showing, and kind of, but then you go around the room and everybody would do that. So no
wonder your critique group was, 15 hours long.
That was 15 hours long back then. It was only it was 3, but still, but there's a lot of people in it. But you would see the collective eye glazing that would happen. And it wasn't because it was negative stuff. It was done gently. It was done honestly and encouragingly. But it was just, you could see, okay, there's that 10 or 15, and there's 20 more here, and there's 10 more there. And by the time everybody had gotten done, somebody had about 100 things to consider. And to figure out how to...
Okay, wait, let me tee it up for you. Here it is. I'm teeing it up.
Okay.
How did you fix that?
How did I fix? Well,
wait for it, because this is good. This is good stuff.
I realized that if you hear all of that and it's at an equal level of volume, so I'm telling you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's just say 5 things, and I'm saying them all exactly the same, they're going to feel equally important. So I don't know which one is really going to make the most difference. So I devised something that I started calling, and now I teach on it, called the one big thing. The one big thing is when we do a critique, track in Microsoft Word, you can put comments in the sidebar, you're tracking your changes, and you can put the little comments there. But at the end, we do a sandwich, an encouraging thing, call out something that they're doing right, because it's important it's as important to know what you're doing right.
Well, and that goes back to that encouragement. If we don't have somebody saying, hey, I really like the way you do X.
Yeah.
But and all I get is, you missed this, you did this, da, da, da. It's like having a really bad boss.
Yeah. Well, and what you just said is super important. It's not just saying you can do it. I believe in you. It's you're doing a great job with dialogue, or your pacing is perfect. Oh my gosh, your vocabulary is spot on for your audience. Whatever it is. So calling out specifically what they're doing is what's encouraging. So you know where you're hitting the mark. But the one big thing comes in the middle of that. So you start with something encouraging, you end with something encouraging. In the middle, trust that you're right, that your writer is going to be able to read all the track changes and know all the little things, but call out the one, maybe 2, but I try to stick with one thing that you think that piece could benefit from, that would take it to the next level. So if you only had one piece of advice to move the piece of writing from level 6 to level 8, not fix everything that's wrong, not all the imperfections that you've noted, not all the misplaced commas or whatever, but that one thing, that's what we write about. So whatever that is, you write that, you finish with your other encouraging thing, and then you give it back. Now what that does, and this is what I thought it would do, and it did this initially. Now if you have, say, 8, 10 people in your group, Now, instead of getting 100 to 150 things that you need to work on, some of which are conflicting, because some people will like somebody's dialogue and somebody else will,
That's something that we should talk about in a future
That's
podcast. What do you do when someone says, I love this section, and somebody else in your critique group says, this section didn't work?
Yeah, exactly.
Then what do you, as a writer, what do you
exactly.
do?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good podcast. because that happens.
It just happened to me recently.
It did, actually, and she wrote to me, but that's a whole nother podcast. We had to discuss it. And I think that when you learn and get more confident in your writing, just as a general addressing of that, you learn to know what resonates with. If you're knowing what you're intentionally trying to do, and that feedback that is kind of opposite comes to you, you'll know which one is serving the purpose that you have. So anyway,
so tell me, how did your critique group receive this one big thing, and how did they implement it?
My gosh, let me tell you, life-changing. And the reason it was life-changing, I thought, would be, instead of those 150 to 200 things that were just white noise, too much information, if you now have to deal with 8 or 10 things, and some of them will be the same because people will pick up on the same things. Now you know the biggest issues, the biggest things in the room. So I thought that was going to be the sum total of the benefit. Right? That now you've got the biggest things that you need to work on. We'll work on those first, sort them out, and then our writing we'll deal with the lower level things as we get better and better at writing. What happened though, Jane Daly? Oh my gosh, I started noticing that people because we don't submit every week, so I started noticing people who hadn't submitted in a while. They would submit something and their writing was like, are you having a ghostwriter? I don't know who that you are, because their writing was lunging forward in ability and skill. And over like 6 months, it was like the difference between night and day. You wouldn't have recognized if everybody submitted on January 1st and then again in June, you wouldn't have recognized them for the same writers, myself included. You know what? I think that would actually be a great podcast for future, is let's talk about how do we find that one big thing, and what does that look like? I mean, let's actually maybe bring some samples of some critiques that we've done, and see how people can put it into practice. Because I think even in your own work, you could look at your chapter and say, what's the one big thing I need to work on here? Is it setting? Is it description? Is it tension? I mean, it is. You do train yourself to do that, and like that's what self-editing is about. And when I said on the teaser in the previous podcast, when I said I would rather critique the 10 than get critiqued, this is why. When you are having to look at somebody's writing and figure out where the biggest flaw is. I mean, the biggest, hurdle, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge hurdle. It's just the biggest one that's there. And when you are training yourself to look for that, you're training yourself to not listen to your own white noise, which is the commas and those little things. And you're looking at the really substantive issues in the critiquing of somebody else and calling that out. You are, by osmosis, or I don't know what, by body memory, you are training yourself to have that come out in your own writing. So what I saw is the better we critiqued other people without any looking at our own writing, any critiquing of our own writing increased in ability. Okay, so that's a great one. The one big thing. We're gonna do a future podcast on that. So you have been listening to The Art of Semi-Fiction, where we explore every corner of the written word. I am Robynne Miller. And I'm Jane Daly. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube. And like us. Thanks.